Welcome to the channel. Today, we're exploring some unbelievable story. Stay tuned and let's dive in. When I initially met Jessica, I felt I'd discovered someone who shared my beliefs, hopes, and ambitions. We were both at the beginning of our professional careers, with me as an architect and Jessica as a corporate finance executive. Our days were filled with lengthy work hours, and our nights were often spent fantasizing about the future and planning a life together. As we became closer, it became obvious that we complemented one another in ways that made me feel fortunate and satisfied. We were both young, motivated, and ambitious, and in those early days, it seemed like we were creating something unshakable. We grew personally and professionally throughout the years. We purchased a home, spent holidays planning adventures we would never do, and even discussed extending our family. Eugene, where we finally landed, became a common refuge. Moving there was like starting again in a city full with opportunity. It wasn't always easy, but with each struggle, I felt we were strengthening the basis of our connection. It was the kind of marriage that seemed secure until small fractures appeared. I recall well the first few days after we moved to Eugene. The city was huge and energetic, with an energy that brought every corner to life. Even though we didn't know anybody at first, we quickly adjusted to our new lives' rapid pace. Adjusting to my demanding profession as an architect and accommodating Jessica's many business travels kept us busy, but the joy of creating a life together was worth it. The majority of our weekends were spent visiting the different areas, taking in the culture, and meeting new people. That's how we met Sophia and Andrew. They rapidly became an important part of our lives, joining us for meals and weekend adventures, and before we realized it, we were counting them as our closest friends. Our bond with Sophia and Andrew became stronger over time. We'd often spend hours at one another's homes after a hard week, eating informal meals, watching movies, or just chatting about life. We were all dealing with similar challenges, managing professions, relationships, and the inevitable demands of adulthood. It was good to have people we could rely on. Even though Jessica and Andrew had to travel regularly for business, the comfort of familiarity helped us deal with their absence. But, as I subsequently discovered, there were things going on under the surface that none of us saw coming. That Sunday afternoon, we had guests. Sophia with her husband Andrew. Since relocating to Eugene, they've become some of our closest friends. Our weekends were often spent together, going out to dinner, attending local events, or just hanging out at each other's houses after a movie or a stroll. Both couples were in their early 30s, college grads juggling student debt, increasing jobs, and, for Andrew and Jessica, regular business travel. Jessica was getting ready for one of those excursions, and Andrew had just left our house for the airport to catch his flight to the West Coast, which was part of his job region. This was our norm. They went, and we kept things moving at home. Sophia and I worked as accountants and architects, respectively. Our travels were unusual, if not infrequent. Typically, just one spouse from each pair was on the road, and when this occurred, the other spouse would join the remaining couple for supper or a weekend get-together. After Andrew said farewell and left for the airport in a taxi, I let the lady speak in the kitchen while I walked out to the garage. I tidied up my workstation and examined the security system we had installed after a series of recent break-ins. Our system comprised microphones and cameras in each room, all linked to an app in the attic. The system stored everything on the cloud. When the motion sensors were engaged, I could check any room using the app on my phone or any computer I had access to. I checked to make sure everything was functioning since it was my habit. "How was your previous trip?" Sophia questioned my wife Jessica as they sat at the kitchen table. "The usual," Jessica said, laughing. "Work, dinner, a bar, and then eventually some sleep." "Is it true what they say about those who ignore their family on work trips?" Sophia's compassion for her spouse was obvious. Jessica hesitated for a bit before responding. "I wouldn't worry too much, Sophia," she said, taking a sip from her drink. "Does Andrew usually come home to you?" "Yes, but I wonder what he does when he's alone." "If he is alone," Jessica told her, "he will come back to you. Don't think about what occurs when he's not there." "What do you mean, Jessica?" Sophia inquired, evidently apprehensive. "Exactly what I said," Jessica said. "What happens outside the house means nothing." Her words rang in my memory, leaving me astonished. What occurs outside the home is meaningless. What happens when folks are not home? Doesn't it mean anything? Did she really say that? Jessica, what are you saying? Sophia inquired, evidently perplexed, but Jessica had already adopted a more restrained demeanor. Nothing, Sophia, she answered cautiously. You're worried for no cause. Andrew is passionately in love with you. He returns home to you and his travels are all business-related. Nothing more. Sophia was clearly not persuaded by Jessica's statement, but she allowed her to shift the topic. I let them talk for a bit before heading to the kitchen to prepare myself a cup of coffee. After hearing it, I wanted to cleanse my head. Sophia said her goodbyes and went home around 40 minutes later, after which we retired for the night. I was courteous to my wife, but careful. To say that her statements made me nervous is an understatement. As she walked upstairs to take a shower, a flood of ideas ran through my head. Did she cheat on me on her trips? Was this something she had done before, or did it happen just recently? The way she stated it was revealing. Her response was neither introspective or filled with sorrow. In truth, there was no fear or criticism in her tone, just a plain statement of fact, accepting it as it was, guilt-free. What will I do? What would a guy do in this situation? Could I simply ask her about it? Was I really going to throw away 4 years of marriage? We'd even spoken about having children. Had she slept with anybody while traveling? How could I be certain a kid would be mine? I began thinking about her regular work visits to Austin, San Jose, Eugene, and Boulder. Did she have a lover in each city, or just one? Was he better looking than I? None of these ideas left me feeling anything except disappointment, worry, and grief. The lady I loved had deceived me. Even if I wanted to think otherwise, the sensible half of me understood the reality. Jessica betrayed her adultery with a simple slip of the tongue. I did not sleep with her that night. She came downstairs to collect me, but I feigned to be sleeping on the couch, my face buried in the cushions. She attempted to wake me up, but I remained deep asleep, so she soon gave up. I did not turn to face her. I remained in that posture till I fell into a restless sleep and awoke the next morning. When I initially woke up, I noticed the scent of coffee and the sound of her sandals in the kitchen. I opened one eye and saw a cup of coffee on the table. Anxiety overwhelmed me, and I didn't move or talk. I knew I was just prolonging the inevitable. When I eventually opened my eyes, Jessica was standing near the couch, dressed only in shoes and a robe. Her blonde hair fell over her right shoulder, and she stared at me attentively. I rose up without touching the coffee she handed me. She gave me a troubled look as I moved by her quietly. I shut the bathroom door and began brushing my teeth. I heard creaking noises from behind the door, indicating that she was standing outside, but they went away. We didn't say anything to each other that morning, which relieved me. I wasn't prepared to chat. I was not afraid to face her either. I almost looked forward to it. But first, I wanted to know for certain. I needed facts. That is how I work. I never take a step without understanding what is going on. I grabbed my laptop and set up in the corner office of our living room. The desk faced the room, allowing me to work without her seeing my screen. Jessica moved back and forth between the bedroom and the kitchen, maintaining her distance. The quiet between us made me furious. Why didn't she ask me what was wrong? Was this part of her game? After calming myself down, I concentrated on identifying private investigators in the cities she visited. I completed the proper documents, provided descriptions of what I need, and hired 4 detective firms using my own credit card to conduct the investigation. Are you hungry? She eventually said at 2 p.m. I wasn't interested in dining with her. No, I said, trying to be preoccupied. She looked at me from the kitchen, apparently trying to figure out what was wrong, but I avoided making eye contact. Any woman with nothing to conceal would wonder why her husband had abandoned her. A wife who had nothing to worry about. Maybe we could go out somewhere, I said, rising up and retrieving my wallet, phone, and vehicle keys. She was stunned for a second before nodding and reaching for her handbag. Her phone was already in her hands. She constantly used the same phone number, never allowed it out of her sight, and it was password protected. As we approached the door, I let her go first, staring at her young, lovely form, a figure that, until last night, I believed belonged to me just as much as my own body. We usually used my vehicle when we went out, so she sat in the passenger seat, waiting for me to open her door like I always did. Given all that had transpired, I didn't want to do it, but I pushed myself. Whatever had happened before she left on Wednesday, I wanted to ensure she didn't suspect anything. I worried I had already fouled everything up. Sorry about today, I apologized. I think I made a mistake on the project and need to do some quick fixes and explanations when I come in on Monday. About Johnson's project, she inquired. The house? I finished that 5 weeks ago. So much for you paying attention during our conversations. No, I corrected her. Something for a future project this week. I'll be working on new drawings and correcting my mistakes. Everything has to be perfect. I just hate making mistakes. You're too hard on yourself, she said softly. Everyone makes mistakes. I was about to say, that's for sure, but I stopped back. We chatted about a variety of topics, finally getting to bills. Meanwhile, I was thinking about how I'd have to go to bed knowing I couldn't keep pretending to sleep on the sofa anymore. When we came home, I took a shower and climbed into bed with my iPad, attempting to read, but I only gazed at the same page for 30 minutes while Jessica bathed and then left the bathroom. She put on her robe, like she did when she was nude below, to indicate that she desired sex. We had sex. I recalled the last time we made love, when she was actually in love with me. She laid next to me in her robe, and I continued to pretend to read. She put her hand on my thigh and came closer. Are you mad at me? She eventually inquired. I did not answer right away, instead turning to scrutinize her face for any signs. I found your pills in the bathroom, I said. You're taking them again. She froze at my remark. Yes, she said. Oh no. I'm really sorry. I thought we'd wait a few more months. I nodded, not wanting to make a big issue about it. No problem, I said. You're crazy, I said, but it was more out of annoyance than worry. No, I said. I don't want a baby right now either. I didn't say it, but I assumed I did. She remained silent for a few seconds before moving her hand away as I lay unmoving. After a few moments, she rolled over and switched off the light on her side. I listened to her breathing. I stood up, grabbed my iPad, and exited the room. Jessica, I heard her say as I closed the door and returned to the couch. When I awoke the following morning, she had already gotten dressed. It was 6 a.m., time for my run. She was prepared for work. I made you coffee, she explained. She seemed to want to say something additional but held back. She was undoubtedly aware by then that I was angry. When did you find out about the pills? She inquired. I wanted to say yesterday, but I didn't want her to assume it was too recent. Last week, I said, unconcerned that I was lying to her. And you didn't say anything. You didn't ask me what I thought about it. I corrected you. That's all. No problem, Jessica, I responded. If you don't want a child with me, then I don't want one either. She seemed to want to answer, but I moved past her. I'm late, I explained. I need my run. I need the solitude to clear my head. Running had always helped me concentrate, beginning in junior high, continuing through high school, the army, and college. Running has always helped me overcome distraction and self-doubt, both as a young man and as an adult. Now, as a married guy, I was thinking about divorce. That evening, she got home and prepared supper. To be courteous, I sat with her and ate. I hardly finished my supper, but I attempted to be courteous. Can we talk about the baby when I get back from my trip? She inquired. If you want, I said, but all I could think of was what she had told Sophia. What happens outside the home means nothing. The following morning, she was waiting for me to get up. She was dressed for a journey, with a suitcase and coat by the door. Are you going to be okay while I'm gone? Inquired the woman. I'll survive, I said. I always do. This is hard for me, she remarked. I love you. I nodded nicely. She saw the agony on my face and winced. I believe I heard a sob as she raced out the door, leaving me looking after her as the vehicle began and sped away. That day, I visited a lawyer about seeking a divorce. We had no children, so all that left was to share the property we had collected over our marriage. However, adultery may be considered while dividing assets. We didn't have a prenuptial agreement, which turned out to be a mistake. But if the investigators discovered anything worthwhile, I may wind up with the most of it. The attorneys would fight it out in court, stretching out the matter for further fees. What a disaster. Sophia had been messaging and leaving voicemails, but I was not ready to chat yet. Maybe I'd swing over and see her later, but she beat me to it and showed up at my workplace, waiting by my vehicle. Why haven't you answered my calls or messages, she wondered. I've had a lot on my mind, I said. Take me to dinner, and then home, she requested. We need to talk. Sophia nodded and stared at me when I reminded her of my wife's statement, what happens when people aren't home means nothing. Where is she today, she inquired. In San Jose, I said. At least that's what she said. Did you call her at work, she asked. No, I said, feeling silly. Maybe you should have, she answered. Because I did. I glanced at her for a minute. Jessica returned from her vacation on the following Sunday. She went to work before returning home. I'd already prepared supper and set the table by then. Oh my God, honey, she said joyfully. You really went all out. She ran up to kiss me. It wasn't a passionate kiss, but one that married couples often have, even in public. I let her kiss me and it was brief. No uneasiness remained at that moment. I assumed this kiss and the warmth of her palm on mine would be our last. Andrew and Sophia are coming over for dinner, I said as I checked the stuffed peppers in the oven. Andrew and Sophia, she inquired, astonished. Yes, they'll be here tonight, I said, detecting her anxiety. I thought you and I. She stopped off as she saw me turn and offer her a pleasant, disarming grin. I guess I'll go change, she remarked, walking to the bedroom to remove her work clothes. She had attended her final meeting in Boulder that morning before flying home, stopping by her office and returning. It was evident that she had intended to wash, have supper, and unwind after a hard, stressful week. I checked my phone one more time for any texts from Sophia. One had come just 5 minutes ago. I heard the shower upstairs turn off. If all went as planned, Jessica would be ready in time for our visitors. They are on their way, I yelled up to her, but she didn't answer. I could imagine why seeing them was the last thing she wanted. She walked downstairs in jeans and a white t-shirt, the straps of her pink bra showing underneath. She was wearing flip-flops, which we both wore while we relaxed at home. She smiled awkwardly at me and placed her hand on my shoulder. How can I help? She inquired. I've got wine chilling in the fridge, I remarked, examining the stuffed peppers again. Dinner will be ready in about 15 minutes. It smells wonderful, she remarked. What's in the pot? Orzo pasta, I responded. She looked sorrowful as she nodded. It was the dinner I'd prepared for her on our previous anniversary after falling in love with Greek cuisine on our European honeymoon. The memories made me sad, but this evening needed to happen, and this was a part of it. The table was set for 4, with 2 on each side. She gave me a short look before pulling a bottle of wine from the fridge, opening it, and enjoying its perfume. Can I ask? She began to add, when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, leaving her in the kitchen. I said to myself, it's showtime. I opened the door for our guests, who were nearby. Andrew was nervous, but Sophia flashed me a knowing grin before leaning in and kissing me on the lips directly in front of him. Hello, Stallion, she replied, pulling away and walking past me. Andrew did not seem astonished by our public show of adoration. Hi, Andrew, I replied with a smile that wasn't a grin. Come on in, he said. We joined Sophia and Jessica in the kitchen, where they were already speaking. For the first time in a long time, I saw Andrew searching the room. His gaze shifted from Sophia to Jessica and finally to me. He looked like a guy trying to figure out what was going on. We are having a European-style dinner tonight, I said. Sophia sat with me, while Jessica sat with Andrew. Trevor and my wife exchanged brief looks before turning away. Sophia chuckled and remarked, I think I like this, a European-themed evening from the food to the seating. What else do Europeans do? She questioned, raising an eyebrow. Andrew and Jessica stayed quiet as they sat next to one another, plainly uncomfortable, while Sophia chatted along as usual. Inside, I nearly laughed. Europeans share more than just seats at the table, I said, laughing at Sophia, who smiled back and laughed. They swap spouses or have open marriages. Interesting, Sophia replied. What do you think of that, Andrew? He stiffened up. I wouldn't like it, he swiftly said. Jessica trembled slightly and glanced aside. I don't know, Sophia said. Maybe the Europeans are onto something. Jessica and Andrew exchanged nervous looks as I served the dinner. I poured everyone a glass of wine without giving them the option to reject. They needed it. As we ate, Sophia commended the food on how wonderfully it was made. Jessica and Andrew agreed graciously, but their tension was palpable. How was your trip, Andrew? I said as we kept eating. He and Jessica both halted in the middle of their bites, practically simultaneously. It would have been amusing if not so sad. With each passing minute, the weight of awareness became heavier. Sophia's hand resting on my thigh, not sexually, but as a comforting gesture, was the only thing keeping me quiet. Same as always, Andrew said. Meeting clients, visiting our regional representatives, then on to the next city. Sophia said, what about you, Jessica? Pretty much the same as Andrew, she said. We both do similar work, just for different companies and clients. By this point, they were both merely nibbling at their meal. It would have been nearly funny, but the situation was too serious. I refilled their wine glasses after we finished eating, indicating that they had lost their appetite. Sophia and I gathered the plates. Jessica tried to assist, but I refused. You and Andrew just got back from a trip. Go relax in the living room. We'll join you in a few minutes. Okay, she murmured, her smile strained and her eyes full of concern. Andrew seemed to want to say something to his wife, but she excused herself to the restroom. I observed as they entered the living room, exchanging tense, inquisitive looks. They may have murmured to each other, but I couldn't hear them, but I could assume what they were concerned about. When Sophia returned, we joined them. So you two aren't interested in a European open marriage? I said with a smile. Sophia joined in and laughed. Jessica and Andrew laughed nervously, as if it was a joke. Too bad, Sophia joked. They are such prudes. Let me show you something I found this week. I think you'll like it, I said. What is it, a chick flick? Sophia said, appearing to be enthusiastic. It has a little of both masculine and feminine aspects, I said, turning on the television and bringing up a file stored on my hard drive. The screen showed a bright seaside city before cutting to a military station as the camera tracked a vehicle parking up behind a cab at a hotel. Andrew hesitated, but Jessica recognized the hotel seconds before the video showed the two of them departing the cab and entering the building hand in hand. Shock was written all on their features. The camera followed them as they checked in and headed to the elevator carrying their baggage while still holding hands. As the elevator doors closed, they leaned in to kiss. Andrew mumbled, "Ethan, stop," but Sophia interrupted him with a harsh, "Shut up and watch." The video cut to a view inside the hotel room, where Jessica and Andrew were both nude, with her kneeling in front of him. I couldn't help thinking, you would cheat with someone like him. Screw you, Ethan, Andrew eventually said, but Sophia cut him off with a slap and a sneer. You liked that, didn't you, Andrew, she inquired. Do you ever feel just as good with him? I was wondering. My wife's face had altered. I told you not to, Ethan, she said. When we were doing this. Why not? Feeling guilty. Andrew said. I just don't want to talk about him. You're liquidating the mood, she informed me. After that, they lay down on the bed and watched the movie for over an hour. They eventually took a nap together. Jessica was the first to wake up, laying with her face turned away from Andrew. When he awoke, he grabbed for her, and she did not object as he moved her on her stomach. Sophia, who had seen the film previously, gazed at her husband with a chilly, distant face. He was furious, but resigned to facing the consequences of his treachery. My wife, on the other hand, had stopped watching and was crying silently in her arms. The faucet shut off. Andrew stared at me, and Sophia walked over to sit next to me. Well, she said, that was quite revealing, wasn't it? Jessica eventually glanced at me and said, how did you find out? This was all she said. I switched the screen back on just as predicted. When you and Sophia were conversing in our kitchen last week, I played back the discussion between my wife and Sophia. Sophia, it's true what they say about people who are away from their families on business trips, she'd said. I wouldn't worry too much, Sophia, she said. Andrew always comes back home to you, doesn't he? Yes, but I wonder what he does when he's alone. If he is alone, Jessica soothed her, he comes back to you. Don't focus on what happens when he's not there. What do you mean, Jessica? Sophia had inquired. Exactly what I said, Jessica said. What happens outside the house means nothing. For extra emphasis, I repeated the final sentence 3 times. What happens outside the house means nothing. Jessica, that's what gave you away. It made me think that you were cheating on me. I wasn't sure who it was with, but I saw you were letting yourself to cross that boundary. I already had my suspicions. Sophia stepped forward. The way you two always managed to cross paths during your trips, how you sometimes avoided talking to each other, it all seemed suspicious. She was saying to me, it's funny how they were so guilty tonight, constantly checking on each other. Both of you were pathetic. I hired investigators in all 4 cities you traveled to, I told you. Jessica winced and shook her head as she wept again, knowing what was coming next. The next video showed Jessica with another guy at a pub, followed by them walking toward a hotel room. Oh, you witch, Andrew said at her. Did you cheat on me too? Sophia and I could not help but giggle at his scream and the despair on both of their faces. But wait, I said cynically, there's more. The film proceeded, this time showing Andrew in a hotel in Las Vegas with a skinny, muscular lady. My husband never does this for me, the lady said. I'm glad to help, Andrew said as the lady cleaned herself with a tissue. I couldn't help but laugh and clap my hands in response to the insanity. Nice, Andrew, I muttered, shaking my head as he turned away in disdain. What a sight, Sophia said. Cheaters cheating on each other. Priceless footage. We all became quiet, each engrossed in his own thoughts. Jessica was the first to speak. Ethan, she replied, her voice shaking. What's left for us? I turned and gave her a serious look. You know, I said, Sophia and I had a few days to talk and come to an understanding. We are both reasonable people, neither of us are prudes. If either of you had brought up the idea of an open relationship, maybe we could have talked about it honestly. I even considered asking you, Jessica, but you chose a different path, didn't you? You could have asked me openly, so we could have made a decision together. Instead, you chose to be selfish, to do what you wanted behind. I bet they already did, Sophia responded. I heard from people at his work that your wife took him out to lunch several times. Jessica and Andrew looked aside, reluctant to face us. So, what do you want? Andrew eventually inquired. Well, she added, it looks like we have everything we need. Neither of us has children, so we only have to deal with dividing the assets, and since infidelity matters in California, you're both screwed. Literally. Give me your phones, both of you, I commanded. Jessica winced but gave it over, unlocked. Andrew hesitated, but Sophia went up and took it from him. It's not even locked, she said, giving it to me. Give me a minute. I'll check his cloud account, I told him. It took a few minutes and I glanced through Jessica's phone. She had not written anything down, but her gallery had photos of Andrew and another guy. Nice, Jessica, I muttered, shaking my head as she turned away. Here's how this is going to go, I said to him. I can't trust you anymore. There have been too many lies for too long. Sophia spoke out while I was speaking. Let's go, she murmured, taking a glance at the situation. You both work for companies that have moral standards. Have you forgotten that? I saw worry on their faces. Both your boss and their legal teams would be extremely disappointed with your behavior. One of them is a skirt chaser himself, but after his company had to pay for one of his indiscretions, he now lets his HR and legal departments go after those who break the rules. This must be your boss, Andrew, Sophia said. Damn it, Andrew mumbled. That's why you got into trouble, idiot. Sophia said to him, I gave you everything you ever wanted in bed. I shared all of myself with you and never held back, unless I was sick. You betrayed me, Andrew. It's over between us. Well, not yet, he mumbled. What do you mean? I interjected. Divorces are inevitable and both of you will sign papers giving us 70% of the assets. If you fight us, your videos will be shared with your families, friends, and employers. Jessica, I informed her, pack for at least a week and we'll discuss how you can get the rest later. Her expression expressed anguish and hesitant acceptance as she nodded and started to weep again. She carefully stood up and walked into the bedroom to get her items. Jessica finished packing 2 bags, a travel bag, a laptop case, and a handbag in 40 minutes. Sophia and I stood side by side as she loaded everything into her vehicle and drove off for the last time. She stretched out to me, but I backed away. She wailed again before leaving in sorrow. Everything went better than we expected, Sophia murmured, coming closer to me. They brought this on themselves, I said, as we saw my soon-to-be ex-wife's automobile fade into the distance. Every spouse has the opportunity to cheat, not everyone takes it, Sophia replied, smirking. Funny, I said, some people think they have an open marriage, but they forget to inform their spouse about it. Do you want an open relationship? Sophia said as I stepped away from her grip. That feels too much like dating others, I said. Do you need it? She inquired. I just need something different every now and then, Sophia. It's been a while since I've had any variety, and sometimes I may need a change. We agree, she said, breathless. 3 months later, the divorce was completed. Sophia and I each got the 70% we wanted. Sophia sold her home and I took out a loan to pay Jessica for 30% of it. In one day in court, all financial and legal difficulties were resolved, but Jessica's grief and shame remained. She lost everything except her job. Her parents found out when she began preparing them for the potential that I might give them films and images out of spite. I've never done that. Andrew just disappeared after his divorce from Sophia was completed. She had enough money to buy him out, but his parting words to her were that he would be in contact. It's been 4 years and we haven't heard anything from him. Jessica is still working and traveling. What she does is no longer important to me. Sophia and I were in a cafe the other day when Jessica passed us by, her phone in hand. Sophia and I live together, but we both avoid true commitment. My divorce has been a year, and my memories of Jessica are starting to fade. Sophia and I are talking about going across the globe. I just got a letter. Hi, Ethan. I hope you're doing well. I'm trying to live my new life, but to be honest, it's not easy. I miss our time together. I miss you and us. I've had so much time to think about what I did to you, to me, and to us. I ruined everything by believing I deserved to have everything I wanted, regardless of the consequences. In my pursuit of sexual exploration, self-indulgence, and self-fulfillment, I hurt the man I loved, lost my marriage, and helped destroy Sophia. I owe you an apology, Ethan, not only for ruining our marriage and our life together, but also for, as you pointed out, losing respect for you. But before that, I lost respect for myself. I fell for the belief that I deserved the pleasures and experiences I thought I had missed out on, and now I have the experience of divorce behind me that I never expected. Nothing about it brings me satisfaction or comfort, it has torn me apart. I heard you and Sophia are still together, and although I wish you both happiness, I would be lying if I said I wasn't envious. Take care of yourself and Sophia. Your sad ex-wife. Jessica. P.S. Loneliness is bad, what occurs outside the house matters a lot. I folded the letter and placed it aside, looking blankly at the table. Jessica's words rang in my head. She accepts it, but it does not affect anything. It's been too long, and what's damaged is beyond repair. Sophia saw my quietness and approached. What's wrong? She inquired. I passed the letter to her. She hurriedly skimmed the material. Jessica, she inquired. I nodded. She's still stuck in the past, I said. Even now, she doesn't fully grasp that what she did was more than just selfish pleasure-seeking. It shattered everything. Sophia sat down next to me, smiling sadly. Some people never learn until they lose everything, she told me. We sat silently for a few seconds, the weight of the past still hanging between us. Sophia eventually spoke out. We are doing better, though, aren't we? I nodded. Yeah, we are. We weren't perfect, but we had each other, and that was enough for now. Jessica's letter reminded me of all we'd been through, but it also validated that we'd made the right decisions, no matter how difficult they were. There was no turning back, and I was okay with it. Sophia placed her head on my shoulder, and I felt a feeling of closure flood over me. The letter marked the end of my previous existence. We would go on, leaving behind the complex web of lies and treachery that had trapped us all. The future, although unknown, seemed a bit brighter. "Let's plan that trip around the world," I murmured gently. Sophia smiled up at me. "I thought you'd never ask." The weeks after my divorce were a curious combination of relief and uncertainty. It felt as if I had walked out of one life and into another, yet my thoughts couldn't completely disengage from the previous one. The echo of Jessica's words in that letter, her sadness, her feeling of loss, kept drawing me in, even though I knew nothing she said could erase what had occurred. You cannot undo treachery, and no apology, no matter how earnest, can heal the scars left behind. I'd learnt the hard way. However, there was a sense of tranquility and finality. The realization that this chapter of my life was genuinely over helped me to breathe a bit deeper and sleep a little sounder. I'd been so caught up in the web of doubt and suspicion that I hadn't realized how hard it was to live with the continual weight of uncertainty. At least now I had some clarity. I knew what had occurred, I had made my choices, and the next step was up to me. Sophia was at my side through everything. We were both aware that our relationship was built out of grief from the shattered parts of our former marriages, and neither of us attempted to hide the complexities of this. However, it made us more honest with each other. We'd seen the worst of what relationships might be: deception, betrayal, and lies, and neither of us had the stamina for more of it. So we were honest with one another, sometimes painfully so, but it seemed like the only way ahead. It wasn't long before we began really discussing the vacation we'd mentioned, traversing the globe. It seemed like the ideal way to escape the ruins of our previous lives and embrace something fresh. I had no idea how much I needed it, something that didn't remind me of Jessica, Andrew, or the innumerable facades that had shattered our marriages. We sold everything we didn't need, packed lightly, and scheduled our flights. First stop, Europe. Sophia had been there before, but it was new to me, and I was thrilled. I wanted to see everything: the little alleyways of historic villages, the undulating hills, and the wineries. More than that, I wanted to live a life free of the ghosts of my past. Sophia felt the same way. We were both sick of looking over our shoulders, second-guessing every word and glance. Our first few weeks in Europe were fantastic. We went from city to city: Paris, Florence, and Santorini, taking in the sights, tasting the cuisine, and appreciating the simplicity of being together. We had no expectations or demands from each other. We were simply two people trying to live in the moment, and for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I wasn't worrying about what had been or might have been. I was just living. But in the quiet times, when Sophia fell asleep next to me in some lovely little hotel, I couldn't help but think of Eugene. The place that had been home, the city where everything unraveled. Jessica's letter brought back memories of the wonderful times, the laughing we had shared, and the plans we had made for the future. It was difficult not to feel melancholy when I thought about how everything had ended. But the grief was different today. It wasn't the agonizing anguish that had gripped me in the beginning. It was now more of a faraway aching, a recollection of something that used to matter but no longer did. Sophia and I sat on a patio facing the sea one night in a little Greek beach town, with the moon spilling silver light over the ocean. We hadn't talked in a while, each immersed in our own thoughts. Sophia finally broke the stillness. "Do you ever think about her?" she questioned, her voice soft and almost hesitant. I didn't need to ask who she was referring to. "Sometimes," I confessed. "Not in the same way I used to." Sophia nodded and traced the rim of her wine glass with her finger. "I get that. I think about Andrew too. But it feels distant now. Like it happened to someone else." "Yeah, I agree. It's strange, isn't it? How something that was once your whole life can just fade." Sophia smiled gently. "Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that means we are healing." I thought about it for a bit and then nodded. "Yeah, maybe it does." We sat quietly for a bit more, watching the waves smash against the coast. The weight of the past no longer seemed so oppressive. It was still there, but it did not suffocate me. I could breathe. As the weeks grew into months, Sophia and I continued our journey around Europe and beyond. We went to old sites, trekked through the mountains, and strolled through towns where no one recognized our identities or stories. It was liberating to be someplace where the past no longer followed us. We were just two individuals traveling the globe together, but that was enough. Even as we went ahead, I couldn't stop thinking about Jessica's letter. Something in her remarks stuck with me, her admission that in her pursuit of freedom and sexual exploration, she had lost sight of what actually important. It was a lesson she had learned too late, and although I couldn't forgive her for her actions, I did understand her sense of emptiness. It didn't justify her acts, but it did make them a bit clearer. As we stood on a rock in Santorini, staring out over the immense expanse of the Aegean Sea, I felt a feeling of completion. The letter had been the last chapter, the last connection to the life I had left behind. Jessica had made her decisions and I had made mine. There was no turning back, no fixing what had been damaged. But that was fine. Not everything could be mended, and not all stories ended happily. Some have just concluded. Sophia turned to face me, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "So, what's next?" she inquired, a grin spreading over her lips. I grinned back. "Wherever we want to go." The world was wide open. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I owned my life again, like the future was something to look forward to rather than dread. The agony, betrayal, and heartbreak were all part of my tale, but they did not define me. All that mattered was that I was making progress. Sophia grasped for my hand and we strolled down the cliffside path, the world unfolding before us, full of possibilities. We'd left Eugene behind. We'd left the falsehoods and betrayals behind. Now it was only us, forging a new road one step at a time. And as the sun fell behind us, leaving a golden light on the horizon, I knew I was prepared for whatever happened next. Ready to live, love, and let go of the past. Because sometimes the only way to fully move ahead is to let go of what no longer serves you. And this is precisely what we were doing. The months following our vacation were filled with a renewed feeling of clarity. Sophia and I had gotten into a comfortable routine. We continued to explore the globe together, but there was no urgency. Our path had evolved into one of personal and outward exploration. I was finally beginning to feel like the guy I was supposed to be, unburdened and free of the betrayal shackles that had tethered me to my past. However, as time passed, memories of Jessica resurfaced, particularly when I saw families, couples with children, or old sites we used to frequent together. It was difficult not to recall the days when I believed we had something indestructible. The anguish was less intense than before, yet it remained like a scar that I knew would never go away. Sophia and I were sitting at a little cafe in Madrid one day, watching the beautiful rain fall outside. We were discussing our plans for the next 6 months, including where to travel next, when I got an unexpected message. It came from Jessica. It had been a long since I had heard from her, and I was first hesitant. But I opened the message. "Ethan, I hope you're doing well. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say something. I've been through so much since everything fell apart. I've been working on myself, and for the first time in years, I feel like I might actually be becoming the person I always wanted to be. I don't expect forgiveness, but I just want you to know that I regret everything. I made terrible mistakes that I can never undo, but I'm truly sorry. I never wanted to." The message was extensive, so I read it multiple times. It was loaded with guilt for what she had been unable to express before. But there was nothing she could say to alter the outcome. I'd moved on. I had created something fresh and stronger with Sophia. I put down my phone and looked up at Sophia. She hadn't spoken anything, but I could see comprehension in her eyes. She understood how difficult it had been for me to overcome my past and move ahead. "Do you want to respond?" she said quietly. I thought about it for a bit. The fact was that I no longer felt angry against Jessica. There was no animosity or resentment. There was nothing. I wasn't furious any longer. I wasn't sad, either. I was free. "No," I said. "I don't think I need to. I've moved on, Sophia. You and I, this is what matters now." She smiled at me, and I felt a weight lift off my chest. It was finished. Jessica and Andrew were in the past, where they belonged. My life was here, with Sophia, and I was eager to see where it would lead us. Later that evening, Sophia and I sat on the balcony of our Madrid apartment. The city was alive with lights and vitality, while the streets bustled below. We watched the sunset in quiet, fingers entwined. "Do you ever think about our future?" Sophia inquired. I nodded. "Every day. I know we've been through a lot, more than most people would even imagine. But we are still here. We are still together. And that means everything to me." Sophia put her head on my shoulder. "I'm happy with you, Ethan. I've never felt this way before. Like I've found my person." I grinned. "You are my person too, Sophia. And we are going to be okay. Together, we'll figure it all out." For the first time in a long time, I felt confident. I'd been through heartache, betrayal, and loss, but they no longer ruled me. I had learned how to let go and welcome the future. As we sat there, with the sun's final rays slipping beyond the horizon, I reflected on how far I had come. I'd let go of everything that had weighted me down, including every lie and betrayal. The past was behind me, and the future was ours to shape. Thank you for watching. What do you think? Can people genuinely move on from treachery, or does the past always haunt us? Please share your ideas in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future articles.